A very, very warm welcome to everyone and for joining us today. I know that this is one of those conversations I think that is happening possibly more in our heads. And I think we wanted to bring it out and say, let's talk about it. So, Sipping Thoughts today is very, very excited to bring you an expert session on rethinking your career during the current times with Divya Modi, who's an investor, an entrepreneur, and a business leader. We all know that today we're living in really, really challenging times. A lot of people's careers have been impacted or possibly could be impacted. And a lot of us are feeling uncertain of where our careers are. So today's times have forced many people to rethink their career plans and for many even to consider taking on that entrepreneurial project earlier than expected. Whatever may be your special circumstance, career change is always a challenging issue. We get pushed out of our comfort zone to learn and grow in unexpected ways. So, how do we navigate our career change, especially in today's time? And I know a lot of us don't even want to think about it, but somewhere in the back of our mind, it is looping through. We hope that this session will answer all your questions related to career change. If you are unsure how to change your career or what pros and cons to consider, this session is the one for you. And about our speaker today, we're very excited today that we've got Divya Modi with us. Divya has successfully built and exited several business ventures in the sectors of financial services, healthcare, and retail. Having had several career changes across geographies and sectors over the past 17 years. She has had the opportunity to transition between roles, both in the corporate world and as an entrepreneur. She's an MBA from the University of Chicago, yes, same alums, thank you, and a CFA charter holder. And she mentors several first-time entrepreneurs in their entrepreneurial journey, along with being an active investor in the startup ecosystem in India. She also shares her blogs and talks on several topics around entrepreneurship, women empowerment, and career development regularly through her site, www.divyamodi.com. And with that, I turn it over to Divya. Divya?
It's a pleasure to be here and good evening, everyone. I'm so glad that all of you could join today. And the objective today for me is to really make this session as interactive as possible so that I can answer as many questions that you all may have about career change. You know, today's times are really very different for all of us. I don't think there is anyone here who cannot say that their career has got somewhere not affected by the situation. And there is a lot of challenges that each of us are thinking in our head on how today's times will affect our career. So to start off with, in order to make this session really interactive, I would encourage you to please type your questions in the chat box like Sukriti suggested. And I would really start by asking a question to all of you. What is the biggest concern that you are thinking about in your career today? And what would be some of the things that you feel are the reasons that you may be looking for a career change? We'll keep coming back to these questions, and the flow for today will be I'll spend some time on the presentation, and then we'll have lots of time at the end of it to answer any questions that you type. So just starting off, we're going to talk about rethinking your career during the current times. You know, today's times, like I mentioned, are very challenging, and there are several reasons why people may be thinking about career change. I'll quickly talk about my experience with career change. I worked in 3 different sectors, so I have an experience of how to change between sectors from financial services to retail to healthcare. I've also taken different roles from finance to operations to investing. So I'll talk a little bit about how do you think about changing careers when you're looking to go between divisions and between departments. I've also worked in 4 different geographies from the US, Singapore, UAE, and India. And I'll talk a little bit about the value that adds to your career. And finally, I have worked both in a corporate as well as entrepreneurial environment. And today I work very actively with first-time entrepreneurs as they look to launch their businesses. So I'm going to touch a little bit upon how to become an entrepreneur and what to look upon when you're looking to start your entrepreneurial journey, which a lot of people today are talking to me about. So what are the reasons you may be thinking about career change? A lot of people today are fearful and they have a certain level of anxiety. Will my job exist tomorrow? Will my organization start cost cutting? Will my position change? Will I be asked to do a role that I wasn't previously asked to do? A lot of people I speak to have roles that focus around social interaction. And with this new normal of social distancing, how will that get affected? You may be in an industry that may be going through a tremendous transformation, and this may be a time where you need to think about whether my industry will be there tomorrow or not. So these are some questions that come up quite often when people are thinking about their careers today. And that's really in the current situation where we are today, where social distancing, working from home has become a norm. So, how do you think about changing your career in a time where you may be forced to change? You may be very happy in the role you are, but unfortunately, the way things are going and the way your industry is changing, the way you worked is not going to be possible for the next couple of months or maybe 2 or 3 years. And how do you look at a career change in today's situation? And finally, how do you look at this from a perspective of an opportunity? A lot of people really look at it in terms of thinking about how do I showcase my strengths? Maybe there's an entrepreneurial venture that I have been thinking about that I could not do earlier. And now is the time when I'm forced to maybe think about doing that. Or there's an opportunity for a product that's not being met out there that I can provide. So I feel that when people look at career change, it really comes down to a combination of fear, anxiety, maybe the current situation and forced change, and really bringing it all together and trying to see what is the opportunity here for myself. So when you're really thinking about career change, what do you need to keep in mind? The first thing I really talk to people about is courage. You can evaluate whether you should make this change or not, whether you should go ahead and take that job offer or not. But ultimately, all those evaluations come down to saying, I have decided in terms of this is the risks that this undertakes. And at some point, you need to take that plunge. You need to say that I believe in myself, I focus on my strengths, and I'm going to go ahead and take that plunge and go ahead and adapt to that change. So it really comes down to a combination of having the courage to make that change and also focusing on your strengths. Because whatever career you may have had in the past, there are certain strengths that you bring to the table, and that's very important to look at. The next most important thing is to really look at your career as a journey and not a destination. You know, a lot of people I speak to in today's times talk about the fact that, you know, they had a destination planned for their career, and what's happening now with the situation has derailed that. And my answer to that is to say that ultimately your career is a journey. And it's very simplistic to think that my career is going to be a linear path. I think that's something that's a thing of the past. We have to think of our career as a journey and see that what are the skills we can bring in to every point in that journey. So the job you're doing today, the role you're doing today, maybe the role your boss is offering you today, which is very different from what you had thought of earlier. It's all part of that journey. So how do you look at that? The next most important thing is to have flexibility. Today is something that, you know, we've really learned how to adapt. I think working from home, staying indoors has tested all of us. And it's really taught us that we need to adapt to the new normal. We need to be flexible, and we need to have a learning attitude. These two things, flexibility and learning attitude, are two of the most important things when you're looking at a career change. Because when you move from one role to the other, when you move from one geography to the other, or when you move from one industry to the other, at some point you are going back to the drawing board and relearning. And therefore, it is very important to have that learning attitude and to be able to adapt, to have the flexibility to listen to a different point of view of somebody who probably has more experience in the career or in the area that you don't. Going into my next slide, which is looking at top 4 mistakes that career changers make. So you talked about changing sectors. And I think any kind of career change you're trying to make, whether it is changing industry, changing your area of work, or changing geographies, these are the 4 mistakes that you need to really learn from. And this has been proven by research that is out there. The first is finance. It's very important to understand what is your personal financial situation. Where are you today financially? And I think that's a very honest conversation that we all need to have with ourselves before we are looking at any kind of change. Do you have the financial comfort and support by your savings or a spouse at home who's probably earning to make that career change and to maybe take that salary cut or to take on that entrepreneurial journey where you may not have a regular income stream for a little bit. So those are things that you really need to think about. And if you feel that probably at this stage you're not at that financial situation, it's perfectly fine to say, I will eventually make that change, but maybe I'll do it in 2 years. And maybe a lot of people have changed those plans today because the situation has forced them to rethink how they do it. So that's the important thing that I feel people don't have that honest conversation, and it's very, very important to do that. The second important thing to think about when you're looking at career change is to take some small steps. It's not required that you make a big drastic change without really testing the waters. And I feel it's personally that it's important to test the waters, and it's possible to test the waters. When I was looking to, for example, move from finance to operations, there was no way I was going to get that opportunity because I didn't have that experience, I didn't have that expertise, and neither would I be given that opportunity in an area that I had no experience in. So the way I did that is I took small steps. I became part of a project team where I was still focusing on my specialty, but being part of a smaller team, I had the opportunity to really value add and be part of a smaller team and see how the other sections worked. And by bringing in my value add, people could learn from me. People could see that I had a value add to give in their area, which was not my area of specialty. And with that, it's very important to not give up. You should have a timetable in mind. I think it's very important to have a realistic timetable of how long will it take me to make this career change. Maybe it's going to be a lot longer in the new normal we are today, but whatever your time is, you say I take a year to make my career change, add a few more months to it, because it's very important to have that timetable in mind so that you don't give up too early and you're realistic about the kind of time it will take to make those changes. And finally, know your why. I'm going to talk about this in the next 2 slides, but I think it's fundamentally very, very important to know your reasons for change. So a lot of people talk to me and ask me, how do we go about it? It's fantastic to think about this career change, but how do I really go about it? And I talk about 4 reasons. The first reason is, please write down your reasons for change. Be very, very clear on why do you want to change. It is very important to be true to yourself. There's nothing wrong in having a very simple reason to change, which could be that I'm bored. I want to do something different. Maybe I have a boss that I don't like and I don't want to work for him or her anymore. It could also be saying that I want to do something different, or I want to get into a different organization, or I don't like my team. A lot of times I find people want to jump into a career change without really thinking of their reasons. And if your reasons are not very clear, you may make a decision that you regret. The second most important thing is set very realistic expectations. You cannot make a lot of changes at the same time. You can't change geography, industry, role altogether. If you want to make a change, make it one at a time. So perhaps if you want to change a role, it's probably easier to do it within your own organization where people already know you, they understand you, they know the strengths you bring to the table, and you have certain personal brand that you've built up within your team and with your superiors that will allow you to get that opportunity. Perhaps if you're looking to change industries, then don't change roles at the same time. So set very realistic expectations for yourself. Thirdly, be prepared to adapt. I think this is one thing which I feel, particularly for later stage career changers, is very important to think about. When you're in your mid 30s or your 40s and you're trying to change careers, you have this feeling that I know it all. I've done a fantastic job in the role I am. I'm so well appreciated. What do I need to learn? But believe me, when you go into a new role, you really need to learn a lot because you are coming with a lot of strengths. You're coming with a different perspective, but there's a lot of ways you don't know how things are done. And many times it may be somebody who's working for you. Many times it may be somebody younger than you who's teaching you. I mean, for all of us, technology today, I think the youngsters do technology a lot better than we do. And at times it's going to them and saying, can you help me out in how to do a Zoom call? Or can you help me out in how to work Microsoft Teams better? And there's nothing wrong in doing that. So I feel it's very, very important to have that thinking and that mindset that I have to be prepared to adapt. The last most important thing is be prepared to unlearn. I know we all have a lot of ego in saying, we know how this is done really well. And that's great to have because that gives us a lot of confidence. but it is also important to unlearn a lot of things. I have personally unlearned so much as I have changed from one role to the other or one geography to the other, because the way things were done in one place is probably not the right way they'll be done in another way. So it's very, very important to also be prepared to unlearn. Perfect time to get into my next slide, which is about should I become an entrepreneur? And I work with a lot of first time entrepreneurs, both investing with them and mentoring them. And the first thing I always encourage them to think about is know your why. Why do you want to become an entrepreneur? Is there a market need that is not being met that you want to meet? Is there a product that you're trying to bring into the market or a service that you feel that people require? For a lot of people, it could be as simple as saying, we want to work more flexible hours, we want to have more freedom, we want to be our own boss. Whatever your reasons are, I first suggest people that please sit down and really list your reasons on why you want to be an entrepreneur, because it's not easy going out on your own, especially when you're a professional moving into an entrepreneurial role. There is an income, there is a salary that you're used to that will stop. It may take longer than you expected. You may need a certain amount of funding that's required. So really know your reasons on why do you want to become an entrepreneur. The second thing is know your finances. And this comes back to a point that I spoke about earlier, but this is more important if you're going to become an entrepreneur. Really work out that, okay, till what level do I need to fund this? When will my break even happen? When will my income start supporting my expenses and I will not be paying out of pocket? And thinking through this is important. Many times people want to launch their venture and they say, okay, I have enough to fund it. And then maybe I have enough support at home or I have enough savings that I can take care of my finances till my venture starts making money. So really think about your finances. This is something that people don't think about enough. And I always encourage people to bring in a mentor. When you're in an entrepreneurial journey, remember that there are a lot of people who've done this before. And you don't need to find all the answers. There are a lot of people who've done this and they have found the answers. They have gone down that path that you are planning to go, and they have made mistakes. So really shorten your learning curve. Bring in somebody who's gone through a similar journey, talk to them, brainstorm your idea, tell them, this is what I'm thinking of doing. What do you think? Bring them on as your mentor and as your board of advisors. I always encourage people, have a set of advisors of people who you admire and look up to, and just talk about your work situation with them and have them advise you. And finally, bring in the right co-founder or right investment partner. You see, entrepreneurship is a very difficult journey, and it's not important to do it alone. Many times people feel, I need to become an entrepreneur, I have to do it all on my own. It's not important for you to do it on your own. What's more important is if you want to do something big, if you want to create something, how do you go about and do that in the best possible manner? And the way to do that is maybe to bring in a co-founder. Maybe you're the person who knows this specialization really well. You're the person who can get the sales done, but you don't know the business side of things. And that's fine. Bring in a co-founder who can help you talk through things, work through things that you don't. And if you have to share your business with them or your profits with them, that's fine. It's better to share something that's bigger than to fail along the way. And it always helps to have somebody who is with you. So know your why, know your finances, bring in a mentor, and try and bring in the right co-founder and also the right investor partner. Believe me, your seed stage investor can be a great person who can also advise you. So bring in the right investor at the early stage who can really advise you also on how to grow the business. And with that, I'll get into my next slide, which is really bringing it all together and talking about how a linear career path is a thing of the past. I think we all know it, that now no longer is it going in a linear way, but all careers go through ups and downs, and that's part of building a career. But I still want to reiterate it, that for those of you who think that we have to go on a linear career path, that's honestly a thing of the past. So write down your reasons for change. Be very clear. If it's a professional change, if it's a change from professional to entrepreneurship, be very honest to yourself. And it can be as simple a thing of saying, I'm bored, and that's perfectly fine. Take small steps. Once you have decided you want to make a change, take a small step in that direction, volunteer, intern, maybe work with a friend in some venture that they're doing, Test it out. Don't make that very big change before you've actually taken those small steps. Set realistic expectations. Focus on what is most critical to you. Do you want to change roles? Do you want to change organizations? Do you just want to survive during this COVID 19 situation? What is most critical to you? And believe me, things will get better, which means that what decision you take today does not need to be a long term decision. It could be a short term or a medium term decision, and that's perfectly fine. And finally, I think this is something that we've honestly all learned in the last couple of months. But be prepared for the unexpected. If things come up, if obstacles come up along the way, don't be taken aback by it and say, "Oh my God, I wanted this to happen and it didn't, and now everything's come crashing down." It's not. This is part of a journey. Take it in your stride, because any change you make will be fraught with some kind of unexpected things that come along the way.
One of my biggest takeaways, I think, that I am taking from this conversation, because is this honest conversations. And I think this is one of the ones that we all struggle with. When we do not have a very, very clear thinking, and we don't even talk to ourselves honestly as to why we want to do something. And I think the tip that Divya has given, which is excellent, is I think when we start to write things down, they tend to become clearer for us. So I think if we do something even so simple as saying, okay, can I even have an honest conversation with myself, understand why I want to do it, and start making my list, start doing my pros and cons, and not in my head, but actually putting pen to paper. I think something so simple actually can go a long, long way in helping clarify your own thoughts. But before we end, I would, of course, like Divya to give one last tip for all of us that are actually going to start or embark or think about this career change before we end for tonight.
So I feel that for all of you out there, if you are really looking at a career change, I would encourage you to think about the reasons, write them down, be very clear on them, and don't get disheartened. Remember, your career is a journey, it's not a destination. These are challenging times, but they are not times that will last forever. So really believe in yourself, focus on your strengths, and go ahead and make the change at the right time. And if any of you want to reach out to me, I'm on LinkedIn as well as on my website. So feel free to reach out and ask any questions later on that I couldn't answer over here. Thank you.